Hello and welcome to First Basso, a show where we learn together how to take that first basso toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candace Olushala, and today we unfortunately are having to revisit a conversation that we actually talked about at the beginning of the podcast series on race in America, some of the politics behind that, and where we are today. We recently had an incident in the United States. This was last week when this was recorded, where the Capitol in DC was attacked by what I would call domestic terrorists. Not everyone agrees with that terminology, but I'm sticking with it. And I have a lot of emotions and thoughts around it, but I wanted to bring in some people that I know who I've been talking with about these events, and I wanted to get their opinion as well and just have an open, honest dialogue about it. So we're just going to have this conversation, and hopefully it'll be something that will leave you to also have conversations in your circles with people on everything. So I want my friends to kind of go around and introduce themselves and say what they do, where they're from, and then we're just gonna talk about it. There's no script. We don't have anything written down. We just have a lot to say. So let's start with you, Greg.
Hey everyone, my name is Greg. I am currently in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I am a graduate of 2 bachelor degrees in theater and film and also in religious studies, youth leadership. Previously served as a director of children and family ministries for about a year and a half. Currently in between jobs, but yeah, that's a little bit about me and where I'm from.
Awesome.
Hey, my name is Brent. I'm currently living in Louisville, Kentucky. Have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in biblical counseling, and I am currently a pastor here in Louisville.
Hi folks, my name is Annabelle Dortch. I'm currently living in New York, and I'm working at Fordham University. I just finished up my doctorate in clinical psychology, and I work with the College Kids Living Counseling Center.
Hi, my name is Alex DeLeo. I live in New York City. I'm an actor. And I also, this past summer, was part of the Reckoning Race at Walnut Hill, striving for racial equality at my old high school.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm currently located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I work for a national nonprofit in Canada, but my academic background is in journalism and political science, and specifically in international relations, focusing on Europe and Eurasia. So happy to be here.
So my name is Christina Kyle. I am an emergency medicine physician and doing a fellowship in pediatric emergency medicine, and I'm out in Loma Linda, California.
My name is Garrison Hayes. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm currently pastoring in the DC metro area. I've been here for a few years.
And I'm Simone Marshall Hayes, and originally from Nashville, or actually originally from the Caribbean, but from Nashville, living in DC with Garrison Hayes, my husband, and I'm an attorney.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Alex Nilgis. I am currently in my last year of study toward a PharmD MBA. I have a background in biochemistry, but have had a long-standing passion for political advocacy and various legislative initiatives, both in pharmacy and also just in human rights. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So, I'll just open up the floor for whoever wants to start, but what were your initial reactions and emotions to what happened when you saw the footage and pictures of what was happening at the Capitol? Anyone want to go first? Yeah.
I'll start. Yeah, I'll age myself right now. I'm 30. So the last time I felt something like this was around 9/11, and that's kind of the sense and the atmosphere that I was feeling. Even though I was here in an apartment in New York City all by myself, I felt myself glued to the TV. Right from the moment I heard about it, I just turned on CNN. I also, I'll be very candid, I flipped back and forth from CNN, Fox News, and a few other outlets just to see what people were saying and what exactly was happening. And I think because at 9/11 I was very young, but being an adult, knowing what I know and seeing all this happen, I was scared. It was something scary. It's not something, we see these things, but this was different. This was here in America. It was a clear, planned attack. And people keep saying it's an attack on democracy. It wasn't just that. It was an attack on people. It was an attack on a place. It was a white supremacy terrorist act. And so watching it unfold, I was anxious the whole day. I couldn't take my eyes off the TV, and I was just like, what is this going to spiral into? Because, I mean, there's even more talks. That's why Parler is now shut down, because there was more talks about more attacks throughout the country. And so, like, that's kind of what I just could feel, that momentum starting, and like no one was stopping it. And so I was just kind of frozen and honestly scared.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'll go ahead. So
Okay, I'll go.
Oh, sorry, Greg.
No, yo.
Offer a juxtaposition to that. So I was actually on rotation, so I was not able to be glued to the TV all day. And when I first caught wind of an update, I just thought there was like a protest outside. Like I remember I went on my Instagram story and I was like, these people are nuts. Like, what is going on? And then I went and got my COVID vaccine, actually. And then when I came out, I was able to read actually what was going on and see some newscastings and hear on the radio. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, oh, like, this is an invasion. This isn't just people being wild outside the Capitol. And that was a turning point for me in the day when I realized, like Alex just detailed, like, this was a white supremacy attack. And as he mentioned, not just on democracy. I mean, I think we have grossly underestimated and underportrayed the planning and the danger that was posed on January 6th. And I think that that's something that I've specifically seen, I'm happy to talk about here. People aren't taking it as seriously as if this were a foreign government intervening. And I keep drawing that comparison because I just felt, me from the beginning of the day, that there's just a protest, and then come to find out what had actually transpired was certainly not a protest.
Yeah. Greg, did you want to go?
Yeah. All right. So from my perspective, again, this is coming from someone who's living in Canada, where we are. The influence that the Make America Great movement has had, it has not just been isolated to the United States, at least from my perspective. Like, this goes way beyond that. There are several people who are up here in Canada who vehemently support that ideology or that notion, or have aligned themselves with along the lines of fascism. So hearing that this was happening, and also seeing that there were demonstrations in Canada that took place an hour away from where I lived. Like, it's not like these people were even at the Capitol. They just decided to find a place randomly. Like, I live about an hour away from Vancouver. So outside the art gallery in Vancouver, there was also a protest. It was just people waving flags and yelling at people that were driving by them. But at the same time, I kept on thinking, like, the United States is being invaded right now, and you're celebrating up here in Canada as if you are part of the revolution. And it disgusted me. And it honestly pained me so much that this is going on, and people were celebrating it. A lot more people were celebrating it rather than just taking it seriously. The key thing that I noticed was how much this behavior has been normalized over the last 4.5 to 5 years, where this way of thinking, this mainstream view on the world, on politics, on democracy, has been so normalized by so many people in society, not just in the United States, but all over the world, that it scared me as to think, like, what's going to happen moving forward? How is this event going to, like, help bring people forward or help us progress or move on to the next stage of what's going to happen? Like, it just scared me knowing that this was considered an okay thing.
Yeah. Simone?
But we didn't even need footage. We were there. We were in downtown DC, around the Capitol area, around the mall, on the mall, and we just went to kind of, see what we could see, just kind of check it out. And really, I wanted to see it with my own eyes and just see what was happening. But then we got there, and a lady was like walking with her lawn chair, and she had like these bags in her hands, and she was walking with her husband, and they kind of stopped near to where we were on the sidewalk, and she was like, they're breaching the Capitol up there. And we heard like all of this noise coming from where the Capitol was, and I was amazed at how close they were, because we were also there for the March on Washington, and there was like, nobody was that close really. And so I was amazed at how, they were very loud. They were, chanting things, and they were very, very close. And so we found out that they had just breached it, and that was when we kind of decided to head out. But it was shocking. And then the police started coming in, and we saw like just the panic kind of start to set in, where people started also leaving. Some of them started heading towards the Capitol. But it was really, honestly, it was kind of devastating to see, and kind of, for me, it was really kind of heartbreaking, honestly. I just didn't think I would see anything like that in my entire lifetime, hopefully ever in the history books. And so I was shocked. And then getting in the car, we heard a lot of the news reports and things like that start to roll in from what was happening, and it was just really shocking.
Yeah, as Simone is saying, I guess we didn't have to see it, on a screen. I think, I'd been online kind of, I try to keep up with what's going on in like these kind of far right kind of circles. So I look at their hashtags. I have certain friends on my friend list who are affiliated with those kinds of ideologies, and I routinely go and check out what's going on their page just to get an idea of what that conversation is, because it's clearly not, that's just not in my natural I guess algorithm. So I go out of my way to get it. And they've been saying for weeks that the storm is coming, like hearing that over and over, or seeing that online so often, I really didn't know what that meant. And so when we heard people saying that they were storming the Capitol, that's just quite literally the first thing that came to my mind, is that for the last however many weeks, maybe even months since the election, people have been saying that the storm is coming. And then to hear that same language used in a moment of crisis, it was just so jarring and vivid. To hear people say, like one guy passed by us as we were leaving. Simone's right. We were not just on the mall. We were literally at the Capitol. We were almost as close as you can get on a normal day legally, right? And so we were right there. And hearing people kind of come out of the Capitol and pass by us once we decided it was time for us to leave. We didn't feel safe. We had a guy pass by us, several people who had been in the Capitol passed by us, who had broken in. But one guy passed by us, and he was on his phone, kind of talking about how cool it was to be inside, and how awesome it was to have done that and to been a part of it. And so it's just this really bizarre moment to kind of be in something that like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, even in the moment. Like, sometimes it takes a while to know that you're living in history, but in the moment, I felt, and I know that Simone felt this way as well, like this really kind of profound sense that this is something that's never happened before. There is no comparison to be made between this event and any other event in American history. That's how different, strange, new, unique, novel it was.
For me, what was I doing? I have a twice a month conference for my fellowship, and I knew I had a break for lunch for like half an hour. It was like 11:30-ish, 11:30 noonish here, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna watch. I knew they were going to certify the election today in Congress. I knew that several Republicans were going to vote against the certification. So I had a little break in my day, and I was like, I'm just going to flip on Twitter here and put on the live feed and see what these people are saying. And then it was so ironic that right at that moment was when all the ruckus started happening in the chamber. I was like, what is happening? And they're like, order, order. And I was like, what is happening? Why aren't they ordering? And then they went into a recess, and then it just went blank. And I was like, what the heck is happening here? So I like hashtag, because Twitter's like the place I get like all the real-time news. The news doesn't happen fast enough on my apps. So I just like hashtag House of Representatives, and I got all this feed about this big rally that turned into a protest that turned into a breach of the Capitol. And it just blew my mind. And I just was kept refreshing and looking at all these news pieces that were coming in just real time. I didn't pay attention to my conference the whole rest of the day. It kind of felt bad. They were on Zoom on one half of my screen, the other half of my screen. I'm just like, how is this happening? How is this happening? I don't even remember what we talked about. But just the jarring, my palms were sweaty all afternoon because I realized just how significant this was. But at the same time, and I grew up in Tennessee. I grew up in the Southeast, just like you guys did too. And I think I've seen that kind of rhetoric before. I haven't had it on my radar as much as I maybe should have, I have kind of stayed in my algorithm because it's kind of what makes me comfortable. I am left-leaning. I am a registered Democrat. I try to be aware of real issues, but at the same time, I think I just had not had that aspect on my radar. And I think to a certain extent, it is good too, to have both sides on your radar. But I hadn't. But I knew that rhetoric was out there, and seeing it actually in full force was jarring to me in a certain way that in ways it has been before. Charlottesville, different shootings, Black Lives Matter. And then I see that counter rhetoric, but actually seeing it in the seat of our government was crazy. One of the things so I had that in my head, of course, as I was scrolling through. The other thing I had as it was going on was, where's all their backup? Where is their help? Because I could easily see that people were inside, windows breaking, police overwhelmed, rightly, as they were just flat out outnumbered. But at the same time, and I'm sure we'll get more into this later, I thought about how is this allowed to happen? Where's our military? Where's our huge police force? Where's all the weapons? I know it's there. Why is it not being used? Because I've seen it being used before. So where is it? So I kind of went on there, but those were my thoughts throughout the afternoon.
Yeah. Annabelle, how about you?
I am really resonating with the fear that the Alexes shared upon first watching the footage. I think it was my sister that texted me, and she was like, "Hey, you watching the news?" And I'm like, "No." So I turned it on, and I think it happened in waves because this went on for hours. So I felt like my first reactive feelings were, oh, expletive, 2020 part 2, here we go. And who are these wild, crazy people? How dare they? And I think even in those reactive statements, you can see I'm distancing myself from it, blaming it on a year, on those people. And I think very quickly I was able to realize you're not naming what's happening in this moment. And I think it's okay to have reactive feelings and thoughts, but the point is you need to regulate what's happening and then critically think about it further. And I think that's when I was able to, take a breath, calm down your amygdala, use your frontal lobe, and think. This is, again, a domestic terrorist attack fueled by white supremacy that you, as a white passing, multi-ethnic Latinx person, benefit from. And being able to both name what's happening and position myself socially and name how I benefit from the values that are informing this attack. That was important because I feel like when you get stuck in this distancing emotional response, nothing happens. You might engage in some performative allyship for a little bit, post some Instagram stories with not any real thought about what's going on in self-reflection. And I've seen myself do these things. I am not immune to these things. And so I think over the course of hours, it went from reacting and distancing to thinking about okay, what is happening and what am I going to do about it? So those were my first and second thoughts.
Yeah. Brent? Yeah.
Well, so my thoughts were kind of along the lines of everybody else, but a little bit about me. I actually was a congressional intern in college. So I actually know the Capitol. I know people who work there. So one of my first reactions, even though we could have seen this coming for some time, was immediately about my friends who were working inside that building as people are breaking in with zip ties, as there's nooses outside, as there's everything. Immediately went to them, and especially some of my friends who I have a friend I went to college with who works for Senator McConnell, and all I was thinking was if there's a place they're going after, it's going to go straight to him because he said that this was silly. They just need to accept Biden's election. So I really worried because they have a newborn. So some of my first was just fear for him. Now, thankfully, talked to him later, had to have people usher them out under armed guard to get them out of the building. But just the craziness of it, and especially as a pastor, because man, I could see this coming for, we say white supremacy. One of the other things that has been thrown around a lot recently is Christian nationalism, which is this kind of we are so obsessed with politics, especially Trumpism, that we will literally start a war over it. And as a pastor, and I'm a Southern Baptist pastor at that, very much of the people I serve around and other pastors I know fall into some of that sometimes and fuel that fire in a way that I wish somebody would just go slap them. But then I'm probably part of the problem by doing that. But just seeing how much of it was fueled from a pastor standpoint, from our pulpits, from our inability to just call sin and just straight up say, stop it. that just blew my mind. And that's what just, as all of it was unfolding, I had one of my interns with me during the whole thing, and I probably was saying a lot of things I hope he never repeats, but just crazy day.
Yeah. How about you, Laura?
Well, I mean, Greg kind of alluded to this, but so as a Canadian, sometimes we tend to have this weird moral superiority that this is happening in the US versus that it can happen here. And I think my initial reactions as I was watching all of it unfold was just utter sadness. It's because our two countries are so linked. There's so many connections. It's like watching your older brother just descend into this path of like just making bad decision after bad decision, and like there's nothing you can do to stop it. But you're also affected by it because America has such influence, not like culturally, economically, politically, militarily. So things that happen in the US affect us here in Canada. So you're watching and there's nothing you can really do about it, but things that are happening there are affecting you as well. So it's just that weird state of it was just sadness just watching it on the news. But yeah, going back to Annabelle, is after you get over that initial reaction of sadness, it's starting to think about what can you do about it, and realizing like it's not just watching people storm the Capitol, but there's other underlying issues in our society that we need to talk about, we need to address, like the underlying the racism, the underlying white supremacy, the underlying twisting of Christianism, like Christian values and the gospel and our and biblical doctrine, and underlying issues of just accepting lies and standing by and appeasing people. That, and I'm using that term deliberately, appeasement, because we as in a greater we, but like people in leadership have stood by for 6 years now while Trump has blatantly lied, twisted the truth, made misrepresentations, mischaracterizations, and they did nothing to correct him, stop him, change him, remove him from office, to the point where a massive mob of people stormed the Capitol to try and take it over. So it's so sad to watch, but it's the next step that there's people that need to be held accountable, but also we need to look at issues in our society of how we can correct this and ensure that this doesn't happen again. And not just like it doesn't happen in the US, but it doesn't happen here in Canada too, because Greg said there's pockets of people here who were vehemently congratulating and egging on the people who were storming the Capitol, who were saying in the name of free speech, this is the right thing to do. So yeah, it's sad, but once that initial wave of sadness gets over, or the initial fear gets over, the initial anger gets over, we now need to look at, all right, we need to address these issues. We need to address these underlying systemic issues in our society.
Yeah, I resonated with all of that. I was at work when this happened, and I already feel the tensions working as a Black pharmacist in a predominantly white profession. And you listen to people, right? So in what I do, I call patients all day, every day, in a predominantly red state. And because I'm really good at code switching, and I talk to my patients in a way that they assume that I'm on the same page as them, you hear things every day that made what I saw at the Capitol make way more sense than I wish it did. And I was sitting at my work desk just listening about it, we had our own cousin group chat with Greg and Laura and my brothers and all, you know, just our whole cousin group there, and going back and forth through it. And I was processing our conversation. I was processing what I was seeing people post about it, but I hadn't yet put my eyes on any footage yet, because I just knew it was going to be bad just from what we were talking about. I was like, I don't know if I want to see what's happening. I'm sure I'm going to come across it later on today, but I don't really want to put my eyes on this yet. So I just kind of sat at my desk, a bit numb, very sad. And then I kind of chuckled to myself because I had that moment. I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Stephen Colbert in his recount of everything and how he was feeling about it. But he had mentioned something like this was like the worst yet least surprising incident ever. And that's why I chuckled to myself. I was like, this is so typical. Like, of course we're here. Of course this is happening today. Why would this not happen today? We've been seeing this boiling since Obama walked into the White House. Like, this has been a thing. And so the fact that here we are 12, 13 years later, after the first day Obama stepped foot into the White House, I don't see why this wasn't the result that we've come to. And I actually got onto Clubhouse, and I jumped into a Clubhouse discussion of Black pastors and Black professionals, and I wanted to hear what they had to say and how they were processing it before I even laid eyes on footage. So I sat there and I just listened. It took me a bit before I felt comfortable speaking up about what I was thinking. But hearing people talk about, you know, hey, some of our friends are thinking of finding a country in Africa to move to. Do all of you in this Clubhouse room have a license to carry? I think it's finally time that Black people have a license to carry at this point. Like, this should just be a regular thing in our households. Because this is only a precursor, the prequel to what's actually coming, and we know that we will be the ones targeted. So we might as well just prepare ourselves. And hearing that over and over and over and over for like an hour, I got to the point where I was actually fed up, and I was like, I can't listen to the conversation of how do we start militarizing ourselves as citizens for what's happening. Like, that was the most disheartening thing for me to hear people say, that's their reaction because of that fear and the anger and the frustration. I also understood it. It didn't make it easy to hear, but I understood it. And I just cannot understand the lack of empathy, the lack of ability to understand the true history of America, to figure out why this is what it is, and how people, and some of you guys mentioned it, but some people didn't see this as much of a big deal because it was our own. I was like, but it was our own white people. If this was our own Black people or our own brown people, we would have called it something completely different. So let's not play this "it's our own, it's not a big deal" card. That does not fly with me. And seeing the already conspiracy theories coming out of it, I didn't know what to do. I was like, this is too much. I feel like I just don't have time for America today. Let me revisit America tomorrow. Like, I couldn't do it. I mean, this first post, someone told me these were secretly Democrats who were posing as Republicans. I was like, y'all got to be kidding. What planet do you live on? What cave have you dug for yourself that you feel so comfortable to say something that insane today? And then to come on my Facebook page and post that? Who are you? What is happening? What is happening? So needless to say, I've been pondering a lot, and I'm deeply confused. I don't think there's anything to actually make sense of, because insanity is insanity is insanity, and you can't make sense of insanity. But I'm tired. I'm tired as a Black first generation American of immigrant parents who worked very hard to be here. And I've been watching this stuff on a microaggressive level for a very long time. This felt worse to me than 9/11. Like 9/11, I think 9/11 felt scary, but it felt like we were all on the same page about it, regardless of race and all that stuff. We were pretty unified for the most part because we all felt attacked, even though there's some other racial issues that came out of that, but that's a whole other conversation. But this one, I was waiting for the solidarity conversations. I was waiting for the people who called out last summer's protest to start talking. I was like, oh, did y'all delete Facebook today? Are you guys on Parler? Because I'm not on Parler, so maybe y'all are talking about it on Parler. So maybe I'm just not part of that conversation. But y'all are real quiet today. It's just, I don't know. I felt like it was worse. And now I'm kind of concerned. I don't know if you guys can let me know how you feel, but I'm actually worried that Donald Trump said he doesn't want to go to the inauguration. My initial thought about that was, is he assuming that someone's going to try to assassinate Biden and he just doesn't want to get in the line of fire for that? Like, what is his thought process in not showing up? I'm a little nervous. But I don't know. How are you guys piecing together the Capitol versus what's unfolding, or what's supposed to be unfolding to our inauguration day? Because I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I think for me, when I think of the events that happened on January 6th, the insurrection that took place, it really makes me nervous for the inauguration coming up. I mean, when you think about just the ability to be able to plan something like that, to execute something like that, I mean, yeah, they weren't able to literally overthrow our government, but they came as close as anyone, right? Like, they got into one of the most secure buildings in the entire United States, and were able to, but for the work of individuals who were shuffling out the electoral college votes out of the room and securing those, congressmen and congresswomen, we would have had a totally different scenario on our hands. And so I think coming up, I hear so much rhetoric about, how they're going to be posted, similar situated people are going to be posted up in capital cities all across the United States, armed and kind of ready to go, and that DC is going to be potentially really dangerous. And it just makes me a little bit, I think if anything, it makes me a little bit nervous for the lives of those who are going to become officials on that day, who the president-elect and, Madam VP-elect, that are coming right up to serve our country. And what is that going to look like on the ground? I mean, it makes me question, in some ways, the security of what, are we planning for it, or are we going to say, oh, it's going to be fine? You know, the same way that we looked at this huge rally, like, and just said, oh, they're just visitors in the district. They'll be totally fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we went down there, you have to understand, like, there were so many people that, and honestly, we heard violent things like all along the way. Like, it was not a secret. It was terrifying.
Wow.
And were they majority peaceful with the exception? Yeah, sure. Like, nobody was punching anyone in the face from what we can see, but they also all agreed with each other. And they were also, you know, expressing these ideas. And so when I think about the end of the month, when I think about what people are looking forward to and that what that group might be planning, you know, it does make me wonder, how are we as a society going to interact with that important day? How are the systems that we have in place going to interact with the danger that is clearly posed to not just, you know, the officials being elected, but the citizens? There are real people who live in DC, who are from DC, who, you know, need to be protected. And then likely, you know, similarly, those people who are in those capitals across the US need to be protected as well, if that's going to be happening. You know, how are we preparing for that? So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on how they interact.
Garrison?
I can, you know, I think a lot of what Simone said really resonates with me. I'm thinking about how unsafe, you know, the inauguration is potentially going to be, and what that event was supposed to symbolize for so many communities. I talk about, you know, VP Harris, and I think about her intersectionality, her what she represents for so many people, whether it be, you know, the children of immigrants, women, people of Black women specifically, but also Indian women, and as a Black man, what she represents for me. It just, she represents so many things, and I really was looking forward to being there on the day when our country, you know, officially inaugurated, you know, its first female VP, and just, again, all of those intersectionalities that she embodies. And now I don't feel like it's going to be safe. I don't think it would be wise for me to put, you know, my wife, myself in harm's way to be there for that. And I'm struggling with that because I really want to be there. And a part of me is like, no, I'm going to be there in defiance. And so I say all of that to say that terrorism has implications that reverberate through so many areas, both seen, unseen, known, and unknown. When in 2001, when, you know, the 9/11 terrorist attack happened, every single time I saw an airplane, I was 11 years old when it happened. Every single time I saw an airplane, I look up in the sky, I see an airplane. The first thing that came to my mind was those were those flights going into the World Trade Center. And now, that's the effect of terrorism, right? It implants some idea, it implants some level of terror or fear inside of you that is hard to weed out. It took years for me to get to the place where I kind of don't think about 9/11 when I see an airplane. Many, many years. And now, I don't know if those who are Trump supporters, those who maybe even hold to white identity politics or far-right politics, I'm not sure if they recognize the fact that their paraphernalia, those red hats, those flags, the things that they believe represents terrorism now. Like, when I see that, I think we drove downtown a few days after everything had happened, and the National Guard had shown up. We drove around and we saw people carrying around American flags. And that image is supposed to be one that brings me a great deal of pride. And yet, seeing it in that setting with the way that she was wearing a Trump hat and just all of that, it immediately sparked this feeling of like you are in alignment with people who sought to terrorize our nation. And so that's kind of a long way just to say that there's so much that has been that has been changed and affected. That those actions will reverberate into so many spaces for so long, including the inauguration, which is extremely unfortunate.
Hold on.
I'm praying that if they do the inauguration on Zoom, that they send us the link. Okay, we don't ask for much. We just want the link.
Just send me the link. Just send me the link.
Click.
Just
click.
Click in. They could do it like a webinar. Yeah. Yeah. Just send me the link. We all got Zoom at this point, so it wouldn't be hard. I like that idea.
Yeah. Honestly, I was kind of thinking about the whole situation with the inauguration today. It's just funny how just the thoughts just kind of randomly happen. I was like studying and I randomly thought about it, but it's like, oh, nephrotic syndrome. But what about like, how are they gonna pull, like what you were saying, Simone, like they're like, this was able to go so far. This was an insurrection. This was domestic terrorism, flat out. They had a freaking gallows in front of the Capitol. Yeah. The moment I saw that picture, I thought, what was their plan? You know, what if they had gotten Pelosi, Pence, AOC, Romney, people from either side, either party, that, like, can you imagine what would have happened if things would have gone even farther? Which now, considering how far they did go, is not too far off. And so then when I think of course, my mind has a tendency to just keep on going. And then what if this happened? So then I'm like, well, what if on the 20th, people with these advanced sniper guns, you know, are they able to sneak somewhere close by? Would they shoot Biden? What if they shot Biden? And then what if they shot Harris too? Then who would be next up? And then it's just this whole rabbit hole thing of awful thoughts. But then for some reason now they become a possibility. And it's sad, you know, because this is such a momentous occasion. We have not only a woman, we have a woman of color in as a vice president. I was so excited about this, and it's a huge thing for our country, and it's really sad that we have to doubt their safety because of this whole lies of their legitimacy, then people not debunking lies for what they are, and then people getting carried away with the lies because it goes in with what they think about. Because I've been trying to follow this train of thought of how people can even get this way, and it's just kind of a mind cluster. And my mind just gets into a bad place and I get super bummed about it when you think about that. And then I think about even in a larger context of what the rest of the world looks at, of a free and fair election of democracy. Supposedly the leader of democracy now is having this tumultuous, you know, change of passing of the baton. And I get really frustrated. As like, I've wanted, and my friends tell me that we joke around, of course, that I'm not patriotic. I'm like, no, I love my country. I just am really disappointed. Yeah. And disillusioned with the extremism that is disgusting here. With absolute hate to other people because of what they look like, from where they come from what they believe in. Anyway, I got off topic. Anyway, I am concerned about January 20th, and I'll be over here. I'll probably be on shift. I don't even know where I could be at work. I'm hoping to catch a glimpse of it, whatever is going to happen. So I am really hoping and praying that it's going to be safe for everyone involved. Something Garrison mentioned had me thinking about some kind of gut reactions that I've had recently, at least in the past, gradually over the past 4 years, I've noticed a change in myself a little bit. And like when you mentioned seeing people in DC, even just with a red hat on or flying American flags a lot of the time, which I've noticed a lot of, and this has just been my personal observations, what I've noticed a lot of times, a lot of people on the far right are really strong Trump supporters, are very prone to not only wear their red hats, but also to fly American flags. And then now, I feel like in the past year especially, it's gotten to be a lot of variety of other flags. And on Wednesday, we definitely saw that they were having atrocious flags, not only maybe Don't Tread on Me, the swastika is the Confederate flag, which I absolutely just have a revolting reaction to. But when I see people even now, even sometimes I even get triggered, and I can't even imagine for other people if this is how I feel. Like even a red hat, I'm just like, eye roll. Or someone who has an American flag on the back of their car, even like with like 2 or 3 American flags on the back of their car, my boyfriend and I will be like, wonder who they voted for. And I'm like, it's just our flag, and I get very conflicted because I'm like, oh, well, does that mean I don't like America? Like, no, I like America. I like my country. But at the same time, why in my head, I just didn't know if other people have this reaction too. When I see someone who's uber patriotic, I automatically assume they're a Trump supporter or someone who is far-right extremist. And so I've been kind of trying to digest why I have that reaction, but I didn't know if you guys maybe had some flavor of that reaction too, or if, I don't know what your thoughts would be.
I'll start by saying that, yeah, I do have that reaction. I think, we are so polarized that the smallest things have become shorthand for shorthand indicators to the polarization that we're experiencing. Like, almost like, it's incredible. Like, you could almost just say something or listen to a certain type of music or like post something, and like I can immediately say, okay, they voted for Trump. It's almost like you're saying with you and your boyfriend, you see like 3 American flags on the back and maybe a Don't Tread Me on the tag, and you're like, Trump supporter, you voted for Trump, I know you did, right? And like,
yeah, and I'm like, I try to check myself, but it's like,
yeah. I think that a lot of that is because of something that I've kind of started to call ideological gerrymandering. So this idea of gerrymandering is that like we're going to set up the boundaries of a district to benefit us entirely, right, as a political party. We see this a lot in the South, where if you look at like District 6 or 7 or 14 or whatever in Georgia or Tennessee or whatever state, it's not just a square. It's like really like a weird kind of cutout like thing. And it's because they're specifically including and excluding certain groups to make it easier for a specific politician or party to be elected in that space, almost guaranteeing the result. And so this gerrymandering does not just exist in the way we're structuring districts in this country, but it exists in the way we're structuring conversations and icons and so many other things. And I think that it's fair for us as human beings to have shorthand. I think, as a matter of fact, I think it helps us stay safe. As much as I share your sentiment in that I am very against the Confederate flag. I think they were traitors, losers, poor fighters. I mean, yeah. they were fighting. They had a war over a terrible thing. Like, they wanted to preserve something that was absolutely abhorrent. And yet, I can't say that I'm totally against the people who value the Confederate flag removing it. Actually, if you value the Confederate flag, if that's something that you believe is worth keeping flying over your home, or if you believe it's worth having on your truck or in your car, actually, I kind of sort of want you to keep it there because it serves as a valuable shorthand that you aren't a safe person for me to interact with as a black man.
Oh,
it just
shoot. I had not thought about that one.
Very clearly, I shouldn't be interacting with you. If I'm going to interact with you, I know that there are limits. I know that there are boundaries that I need to put in place. I know that there are certain things we're probably not going to agree on, so I'm not even going to bring that up. And the Trump hat also does the same thing. Like, as much as I want Trump and all of his stuff to go away, just it's terrible for our country. It's terrible for our mental health. Carte blanche, like everyone. I kind of sort of don't entirely want you to take that hat off because it tells me a lot about you and tells me, like, Garrison, you're probably gonna have to interact with this person. That's totally fine. We're Americans. We share this land. We share this space. But there's certain limitations. There's a certain barrier, a certain amount that I'm gonna keep at bay because I don't know if you have my best interest at heart. It may be out of ignorance, but even that ignorance is telling, and it helps me at least know where we're working from. And so, in that regard, I see value in it. But I don't, think that those shorthand kind of symbols and icons are entirely a bad thing, as much as they grate me oftentimes.
Yeah,
that's good.
Kind of, yeah, that was really good. I feel like it's kind of like I almost don't even want to say anything. I think what's left to say? Maybe a thought that I have about it is I think I question how did I get to that point, because I can totally relate to what you're saying, in that I look at those signs and symbols and I say, okay, like, but I was looking for like a 4th of July American flag outfit like 2 years ago, or fine, where it's like 6 years ago, but like 6 years ago for 4th of July, like I thought I was gonna be cute, and I thought I was gonna get, where's my little hair tie and all this stuff, looking all cute for 4th of July, right? But like now, it's hard to even imagine myself kind of like elevating the flag in that kind of way that is just like so, I guess, like bold and just out there, and it's all over my stuff and like all these things. And I think part of that is just the juxtaposition of the way that I view being American and the way that they have expressed being American. And so like I feel like they have, in some ways, like, people who are touting like MAGA stuff with the American flag are the same people who kind of turn around and say like, well, in the name of Christianity, give us our own jobs, right? Like, we don't want any immigrants taking our jobs, lock them out kind of thing, and so it gets into this complicated place of like your association with, their association, I should say, with those two ideas of like Christianity and being super American, and at the same time being extremely anti-melting pot, extremely anti-religious liberty, extremely
mind-blowing,
right? It's exactly, it's mind-blowing. It's terribly distracting from the beauty of America, and it doesn't at all reflect the way that I view being an American. And so like in some ways, like I hate that they have like almost commandeered like really symbols that are not inherently bad. There's nothing, our flag is beautiful, like it's great, like it's wonderful, but like I just could not, as much as I love America, I love people more. And so the fact that they associated, such toxic ideas with patriotism has watered down that experience of like touting the flag and making it a big part of like something that I want to wear. And so when I see that, I think if you are insanely proud of America when we're disenfranchising people, we're leaving people out, we're calling countries various names, right? Derogatory names. We're doing all the things that make like a person like prejudiced and bad and mean. And if you can be so incredibly proud of that, we're just on a totally different wavelength. And I'm still American, but I'm almost like kind of tapping out of the conversation to be like, yeah, I mean, I'm American, but like I am not going to brag on that right now because we're really acting up. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's crazy. How can I say this eloquently? How much the hyper patriotism / nationalism and this some sort of version of Christianity, hyper judgmental and somehow super exclusive, can all be intertwined, and how you have to be in all three to be in this group, and if not, then it's just so hard for me to wrap my mind around. And it's disappointing.
I don't know if Candy, you were about to jump in there. I don't want to take away any time that you got.
No, you go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. I was going to say that I think, frankly, we can look to, I guess I'll start by saying that I think we need to reclaim patriotism, and we need a really concerted effort to reclaim patriotism. And I think, a prime example of what that means are the Black Americans who have served this country overseas, where they say there's something about what America, the promise of what America is, it can be, and it is to be, spurs me on to serve it and to serve its interests, both domestic and abroad, knowing that it is not serving my interests when I'm at home. And I think that is a level of patriotism that is just mind-blowing. I think that's true, in my opinion. I think that's true patriotism. What I see today are the ideas that were always at the foundation and the core of America, which is Christian nationalism, is a part of the American DNA. This idea of manifest destiny that we learned with like Lewis and Clark and like these guys, the westward expansion that we learned about in like middle and high school. Like that idea, what propelled these settlers in this new land to feel as though they had the right to displace natives and they had the right to conquer this land, was the idea that God had ordained Europeans to come over and to tame the savage and to tame this land in the name of Jesus. That has always been at the foundation and the core of so many of the ideas in America. So that's always been here. The exclusivity of who is American has always been a part of the American DNA. And the fact that, this toxic masculinity, that men are more valuable, and specifically white men are more valuable, that's always been present in American history. And so what we're seeing are ideas that have always been present be challenged by changing demographics and changing socio-political structures. It's been challenged to the point where it can no longer exist as an assumption. It has to be stated, because that way we can make sure that we've set up the teams. Like for the existence of this country, white men have always had the power, the political and social power in this country. They've always existed in that space. Christianity has always been a dominant political force, and the idea that America is exceptional thanks to God has always been a dominant political idea in this country. But we have to name it now, because we're losing touch with that foundational identity. And so I think we're existing in this really big identity crisis right now where people are trying to figure out who America really is. And there are those who are actively trying to hold on to a version of America that, you know, I would say is extremely toxic and extremely wrong. And they're stating that explicitly. And then there are those, perhaps in this conversation, who are actively saying we need to redefine and reclaim and reimagine what America is so that America can be America. That promise of what America can be that for everyone.
I like that question a lot because as much as, like Garrison was saying, how as much as I don't want symbols to be there, I need them so I know what I'm encountering. So it just kind of gives me a sign of like, oh, thank you for showing yourself so I can approach you safely for myself. And at the same time, it's frustrating, like Simone was saying, because it's not that you're against your country, but the symbol of the country has been very well hijacked. Mm-hmm. And you get into this space where you don't want to have to always explain your patriotism. I'm tired of just explaining being a Black woman. Like, I don't want to explain also being an American. I don't want to also have to explain how I'm first generation Black versus not. I'm exhausted doing that and having to do that. I'm willing to do that if it helps progress the conversation and help us get to a better space. But in this season, especially after January 6th, the symbols are necessary. They're also exhausting for someone who doesn't resonate with the hijacked message. And I don't know what that I feel like the symbol is going to keep evolving into something I less and less and less resonate with. And I'm going to have to continue separating myself from whatever that evolution is turning into, while also trying to be a proud American. I don't know what that looks like. Because even today, we can't just say, oh, if you have an American flag and you're Black, oh, then they just must be a patriot. That's not always the case today now. So we got the stragglers. We got the ones that slip through the cracks. And so even then, it's like, if it was a 100% you don't see people of color with flags, it would make it a little bit easier to maybe say like, oh, the ones who have flags that are Black or brown, they're just proud American Black and brown people. But we can't do that. So again, we're going to have to keep explaining ourselves. We're going to have to keep explaining what kind of American we are if we do have something patriotic, or even saying God bless America. And it's like, do you really how do you feel about that as a Black Christian? It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, it's just the conversation is exhausting, but also necessary. The symbols are necessary, although they're becoming more frightening than some of them already were. And I don't really know where that's gonna go, but I have a feeling the train's not stopping anytime soon. So, but that's a really great question. I'm glad you posed that. Brent, do you want to respond to the original question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of in a different circle than I think all of us kind of have different circles to an extent of who our friends and things are. So for one of the things for me, I'm really worried for Inauguration Day. know people that I've called out on social media for sharing things that are being posted on Parler and things like that. I'm not on Parler because I have a life, but like, some of these things that I've been seeing, like they're straight up calling for the exact same thing almost on Inauguration Day. And inauguration, they're outside, there's a lot more fear, I think. And for me, I'm telling you, just be totally honest. Today, I was super disappointed as a pastor in other churches. If I could tell you the number of things I've seen pastors posting about censorship, about, oh man, they took Trump off Twitter, so now they're going to remove your church's Facebook account, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, some of y'all maybe need it removed. But like, all I'm thinking is like, you guys are fueling this flame. Like, as a pastor, I have the way to call, hey, that's sin. You're being stupid. You're not loving people well. You're just fanning a flame. Like, you are making this worse. Like, and then to preach a sermon or to make comments to where you don't even denounce what happened, you almost make it sound like you were somewhat okay with it. Like, in a sense, like, it blows my mind and it scares me deathly. I texted one of my buddies yesterday, said, don't go to DC that week. Like, stay home, go see your family. Like, and they work there. I have friends on both sides of the aisle working in the Capitol. Like, don't go, stay home. Like, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that's texted them that, but they're calling for some crazy things. Like, somehow, if they assassinate Biden and Kamala Harris, that means Trump's president again and not Pelosi. Like, come on, let's learn some chain of command here. Like, blows my mind.
I want to jump in here. Going back to something you said, Candace, but then also picking up on Brent, the idea that we can't follow the train of insanity from these people. I think we can actually follow where their warped logic has come from in terms of, like, they are fearful, this group. They feel that their identity, their way of life is being attacked, and they've turned inward. They've become very, like, it's about me and my little bubble. I don't want to hear about anyone else's worldview or perspective. If you don't agree with me, you are the enemy. And that whole way, I'm not going to listen to anything that doesn't agree with my logic, so everything else is alternative facts. Everyone's turned really inward, and that inward bubble, because everyone's fear has just bubbled over. And so what I'm actually worried about, yes, looking at the inauguration, it's scary to think of potential protests or violence that might occur, but I'm actually really worried about the church in a larger sense. 2020, we just, due to the pandemic, we've done a lot of online churches. I personally haven't, just because of some of the restrictions here in my home city. Actually haven't set foot in a church building for about 6 months now because they've been doing things. And I've seen my fellow congregants, my fellow church fellows posting things on social media. And I'm really worried when all these restrictions are over, when we're able to gather together in person, when we're able to see some of the people who have been posting things on social media in person. I'm worried that the church is not, like, we're going to split ourselves into multiple groups. And not that we're not going to survive, because I think we are, but I'm worried about the splitting within the Christian community, because we've had this section that have just, they're ride or die for Trump. They don't want to listen to reason. They're not going to consider the facts in front of them. They're not going to listen to, they're not going to listen to anything. They've made up their minds regardless of what's being presented to them and everyone else. And I just feel like we, in the Christian community, we've split ourselves into these camps, and I don't know how we're going to reconcile. And I think that's what I'm worried about, is how do we reconcile the split that's happened in the Christian community, the pastors that haven't called out this behavior. They haven't addressed their congregants that this isn't, we're not showing Christian love by attacking immigrants, by attacking people that don't look like us, by attacking people that don't believe the same things we do. They haven't addressed these divisions, and that's what I'm worried about.
I definitely want to touch upon, Laura, what you said about white people as a whole and their identity, and feeling like it's lost or something. Like, this is all, even all the Trump stuff, that's a bigger thing too. But the white people, it's all learned behavior. Like I just remember I read these textbooks. I was told these things. The white man came, claimed this land. They did this. They did this. They have the right to do all of that, and then you have the right to learn about it. And so you, as me as a white man, that's what I was taught. I was taught that all of these things that white men did were okay throughout history. And so then so that's how you grow up in public schools. And then when you are out in the world and you don't actually have the knowledge to keep going, and you're poor or middle class, you have to latch onto something. You have to latch onto something else. And so you have whatever you have, your job, your kids, your family, your hobbies, your guns, what have you. But then a global pandemic happens, and you can't do any of those things. So it's a perfect storm of, well, now I can't do anything that makes me me. So who am I? And then you have this man who is telling you who you can be and rallying for you. And even though he's doing bad things, he's still getting away with it because he's a white man. And like, it's all of this like learned behavior, and it's almost like you're in this terrible relationship, but you keep going back to that man. And it's all so crazy. And I also want to talk about the inauguration day. One thing that I heard on CNN was that they were not going to invite Trump to the inauguration. And so I think him saying that we all know who Trump is. He is a proud man. He's not going to lose. I think him saying that he's not going to Inauguration Day is him trying to get some of that blowback from actually not being invited to Inauguration Day. I personally don't want him to be there. I was in DC actually for Thanksgiving with one of my friends and her family. Traveled safely, did everything, got tested. And we were walking around, and I was like, what are they doing? And she's like, oh, they're building the inauguration stage. And I was like, that seems so backwards to me. And I can't believe Biden is even letting that happen. Because one, at the time, I was like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Why would people be gathering to watch this inauguration in person? Why are they building these things? Why are the hotels in DC already booked? All this stuff. And I'm just like, the smart thing to do is to do the inauguration in a closed space in an undisclosed location. It does not need, and televise it. It does not need to be outside, big and fancy, spending all of this money to build these stages, to get these people outside, to have Secret Service, to do all this stuff, so then we can watch a man receive the job that we gave him? I don't think so. We don't need that. It's not the time. Like, yes, with the $600, like, come on, use that money for something that people need. We need to like start thinking better about these things. And then even going past that, like people are like, oh, should we impeach Trump? Should we get him out of office? All this stuff. And they're like, there's no time. But guess what? If we impeach him now, we don't have to start the trial right now. We can start the trial after Biden's elected. And we better start the trial after Biden's elected, because then the majority won't be with Mitch McConnell. It will be with the Democrats. And so we'll actually be able to do something. Sorry, that was I'm really a little bit passionate about that. But thank you for listening.
Oh my gosh. Anyone else? That was fantastic.
I'll go. Okay, so in my estimation, just because the inauguration is 10 days away, like there's plenty of time to get things done. In my I have a very I'd say simplistic, watered down understanding of a lot of political jargon, but from my understanding, the two things that Biden is saying right now that he wants, or that he's hoping will happen in the next 10 days, is either the cabinet invokes the 25th Amendment, or at least they present articles towards impeachment, which one of the House members is saying that they're doing tomorrow. Like they are on this. They're just like, they're going to get to this right away. think it was in the show 24 when this happened to the president. It happened in 2 hours, like at 4 o'clock in the morning. But in the back of my head, I'm just like, no, okay, that's a TV show. There's no way that's going to happen. Everyone's taking their time. When this happened last week, the cabinet and the House said that they were taking a 2-week break, and I'm just like, the U.S. Capitol was invaded for the first time since 1812, when the British burned it. And you're going to take a 2-week break. If this was Al-Qaeda, if this was any other group that came in and stormed the Capitol, you wouldn't be taking a 2-week break. Come on. You got to take this seriously. Okay, coming back to the inauguration. Alex is 100% right. 100% right. We don't need to be spending money on this. We don't need to be going all out, super, super excessive with these things. Honestly, give Biden a Bible, do the inauguration from the Oval Office, live stream it on Facebook, and everyone can just go, woo, we have a new president, woo. Like, all of this stuff out in the open is not necessary, and it actually reminds me of what happened when Obama was elected, which was 12 years ago. 12 years ago, when Obama was coming to his inauguration, and he got out of the car with Michelle, and there was a big open sidewalk, and he's waving at everybody, and he just had this big smile on his face, and like the crowd was excited and whatnot. And I looked at, I was watching this. I was like 18 years old, but I was thinking to myself, please do not be another JFK moment. Like, I was just thinking that, like, there was a faction of the world that was so angered by what had just happened that they decided they were going to take matters into their own hands. And Obama kept walking, and he kept walking. He made his way to the stage, and I was just thinking, please God, please don't take this moment away from so many people who have waited years. They've waited years to see a black man go up on that stage and assume the presidency. Don't take this moment away from us. Now more than ever, I fear the danger of that situation for Biden more than anything. So yeah, if it's not safe and Trump's already said that he's not going, then what is the point of going through all these motions to make this happen? If we know that there's already, tensions are so high, the danger is real, and there's a global pandemic happening, if there's so many strikes against this actually being a positive thing, why are we putting all the time and money and the effort into making it happen in the first place? That's my 2 cents.
Wow.
If I could chime in here, so kind of going off what Greg said, I think that this plays into the American romanticization of these events. You know, we look for rallying points, and we look for somewhere, oh, we can come together, we're going to have a beautiful inauguration, like, and we do this almost on a scheduled basis after these things happen. If you look at any tragedy in America, if you look at like any sort of example you can come up with, but we look for points to quickly forget about the raw cause of how we got to that point, to a Sandy Hook, to a George Floyd, to any sort of movement. It sickens me from when you finally realize, like, we are so desensitized that we move on so quickly because we are so ready to find one good thing. We're like, oh, we have an inauguration and now it's over, and we've turned a page. This isn't who we are as Americans. Like, no, this is who we are as Americans, and that's the problem. And I think that it's just been perpetuated the last 4 years, especially by an administration who hasn't pointed fingers at white supremacists, has said we love you to the people who are in the Capitol. All of those things we are so quickly to push away because we're like, oh, Biden and Kamala will be better. When in reality, like, as you just said, it's even more terrifying now because all of these people are like going 0 dark 30. You know, we don't know what Trump's thinking anymore, and I'm all for taking his social media away, but now we don't know anything. So it is more scary. I think that's a very good point.